Here's three different price scenarios that I have on my mind when it comes to RSR in an event where maybe, let's say, there is a fully fledged type of altcoin season during this cycle, but even though nothing I say is financial advice, the first one I do want to take a look at is maybe the idea of 8 cents, which is nearly 10.5x from here, and market cap at that point, considering current circulating supply, would be around 4.7 billion. Now, why wouldn't 8 cents surprise me? If, let's say, maybe it did happen, it's because I like the fundamentals of Reserve, and let me explain why. For instance, if we take a look at Reserve, its goal is quite essentially the way you take a look at it, being focused on a stable currency. Now, some people may be thinking, okay, what does this even mean? Now, Reserve isn't actually, I would arguably say, trying to make a currency themselves. Instead, what they allow is that for a token to be made, and this is called an R token that is backed one-to-one by a collection of other tokens. And the reason why I think this is pretty revolutionary is because supposedly it can be done in just a matter of minutes, which I think is very impressive, and without writing any code. So I think that's, again, very wonderful, hypothetically. Now, when I take a look at an example of this, right, I take a look at EUSD. It's a very popular R token, but if we take a look at that, that's backed by a collection of USDT and USDC. So I think that is pretty cool. And again, when some people may be thinking, okay, like how does this even matter when it comes to RSR? Now here's where things I think get a little bit more interesting. It's because RSR can actually be staked on an R token. As an RSR holder, I can be choosing which R token I want to stake my RSR on. It's not like it's determined that I have to do this or do that with that RSR, right? And for instance, by staking RSR, hypothetically, there are some, rewards. And then if we take a look at it, RSR does act as a governance token for that R token. So I think it is pretty cool. And again, the staked RSR can also, in a sense, I would arguably say act as somewhat of a kind of like collateral in a sense, like kind of an insurance for that R token. And then again, there's hypothetical rewards. And also it acts again as a governance token for that R token. So RSR, I think, kind of plays a key role when it comes to R tokens. I think R tokens are pretty cool. Maybe the adoption isn't the best, but I still think it's pretty cool nonetheless when it comes to the overall vibe of the project. Now, some people may be thinking, okay, like, why does this even all matter? Because I think that Reserve as a project is focused on a pretty impressive market. I would arguably say it's focused on the payments market, and that right there is already valued at over $2 trillion currently. So again, I think that's very impressive. When I take a look at maybe the idea of 8 cents, it wouldn't necessarily surprise me if it maybe happened during a fully fledged type of altcoin season. Now, the second scenario I want to take a look at is maybe the idea of 9 cents. That would be around an 11.7x from here, and market cap at that point, considering current circulating supply, would be around 5.4 billion. Why wouldn't this surprise me? It's because we've seen Shiba Inu pretty much exceed that market cap by over 30 billion back in 2021, and I'm not necessarily saying that this is going to be more popular than that, but keep in mind that was years ago, back in 2021, right? And this just doesn't seem like such an outlandish market cap. Now, if the market cap needed was like 100 billion or something, then, I wouldn't even entertain that idea in my mind, but this doesn't seem that ridiculous, but again, this is just my perspective. Now, the third and final price scenario I do want to explore is 10 cents, and that is nearly a 13x from here, and market cap at that point, considering current circulating supply, would be nearly 6 billion. Now, the way you take a look at it is that currently there is supposedly over 600 million crypto owners, whereas compared to the back in the peak of the 2021 bull run, there was around 300 million crypto owners. And what I find very impressive about this figure actually is that we haven't seen Bitcoin at 200 grand, right? 250 or 300. We haven't seen Ethereum at 10 grand, and we still already have like that amount, right? I think that is kind of impressive actually. And arguably, I don't think we've seen a fully fledged type of altcoin season during this cycle. So I think that figure is actually very impressive. And again, if let's say we did see, better, or should I say more positive factors for the space, let's say Bitcoin reached 200 or 250 or 300 or something like that, would the amount of crypto owners stay the same, or would there hypothetically maybe be over 700 million? Now, if that maybe was the case, it wouldn't surprise me, but only time will tell. So when I kind of consider all that, and also when I kind of consider, the sentiment regarding the Bitcoin ETF and the Ethereum ETF, RSR maybe, if let's say, again, there is a fully fledged type of altcoin season, 10 cents wouldn't surprise me. However, sometimes people like to say, okay, what is the timeline that I have in my mindset? Now, the way I view this situation is that I can only take a look at the past and just maybe take a look at some clues from there, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the same way, let's say this time around, but this is what I'm looking at nonetheless. Now, the last Bitcoin halving event happened in April of 2024. And historically speaking, usually altcoins, as a worst case scenario, they typically peak around 18 months after a Bitcoin halving event. Now, the last one again happened in April of last year, so 18 months on top of that is October this year. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be exactly that timeline because, again, only time will tell, but whenever that timeline is, like let's say it even extends all the way until Q1 of 2026, whenever it happens, it's going to be beyond my control. So the only thing that is within my control is just by dollar cost averaging, holding, and just waiting. And this is, of course, just by me preparing for a moment in time if maybe it does something, right? It doesn't mean it's going to happen, but I'm just preparing for a moment in time it maybe does something. But again, I'm just staying patient, holding, and just waiting. That's about it. And feel free to subscribe if you enjoyed this video. I'd greatly appreciate it. It's only the captain, and I'll catch you all on the next one. I'm out. Peace. Bye.